am that this day, now, we are the masters of our fate, that the task which has been set us is not above our strength, that its pangs and toils are not beyond our endurance. As long as we have faith in our cause and an unconquerable willpower, salvation will not be denied us.
Winston Churchill was born in Woodstock, United Kingdom on November 30, 1874. Born in a wealthy family, he soon attended the Royal Military College Academy. Churchill served in the army for a brief period of time in which he wrote many military reports and 2 books on his adventures. After his time in the armed forces, Winston became a war correspondent. When in South Africa for his career, he was taken prisoner by the Boers when on expedition. When he escaped, he wrote a book about his experiences.
Well, one thing that most people can take from Winston Churchill is that he always sort of stood up for what he believed. There was a good quote by Winston Churchill that was, if you have enemies, that's a good thing because that means that you've stood up for something in your life. So I think he can be a great example of that throughout his life, his political career as well.
By the 1900s, Winston started to launch his career in politics and the government. He became a member of the parliament in the Conservative Party. As he didn't agree with their views, he switched to the Liberal Party. Then Churchill became a member of the Parliament in 1908, and he was appointed to the Prime Minister's cabinet as President of the Board of Trade. He was against the expansion of Britain's navy and introduced the first minimum wage, and he also set up insurance for the unemployed. Churchill helped modernize the British Navy by ordering that new warships have oil-fired engines instead of coal-fired ones. He promoted the use of aircrafts in the military and set up the Royal Navy Air Service. In 1917, he was made the Minister of Munitions for the last year of the war and helped produce tanks and airplanes for the military.
He was the Minister of War and Air in 1919 and was also the Colonial Secretary of the Prime Minister, David Lloyd George. Churchill was famous for his controversial decisions. When Kurdish tribesmen rebelled against the British troops stationed in Iraq, he ordered that they be bombed. He later considered using poisonous gas to end the uprising. Only the bombs were used, though they weren't effective in ending the rebellion. During World War II, it took a while for Churchill to realize the dangers of Adolf Hitler's rise to power, but in 1938 he became the fiercest critic of Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, who proposed that the British remain peaceful towards the Nazis to avoid angering them. The day the British declared war on Germany, September 3, 1939, Winston was established as the First Lord of the Admiralty and a part of the War Cabinet. By next April, he also became chairman of the Military Coordinating Committee. King George VI made Churchill the Prime Minister of England and the Minister of Defense on May 10th. Winston built a caucus of leaders from 3 parties, the Labour, Liberal, and Conservative parties. Using his leader-like abilities, he strategically placed people in their key positions. June 18, 1940, Churchill warned the House of Commons about the upcoming war, informing them with his speeches. Opposing the Nazis, he was determined to resist Hitler, so he created an alliance with the United States and the Soviet Union. Previously building a relationship with President Franklin D. Roosevelt, by March 1941, he was able to get help from the U.S. through the Lend-Lease Act. The Lend-Lease Act lets Britain use credit to order war goods from the United States.
The reason he became Prime Minister, the reason that he became such an iconic figure, was that he understood the one major thing of his time, which was the fundamental evil of Nazism and the complete inability to appease the Nazis. At a time when he was virtually the only person in frontline politics to argue this, he kept arguing it for 10 years from the time that he left the Shadow Cabinet in 1931, 8 years at least. And he was not put off arguing it by the fact that he was written off as a warmonger, attacked in the press constantly, attacked in the House of Commons, had his judgment questioned. Those years of wilderness were what gave him the moral power, the moral courage and force to demand the premiership from the outgoing Neville Chamberlain in 1940.
Churchill was also appointed as the leader of the opposition party, where he continued to make a positive impact on international issues. He made his iconic Iron Curtain speech during a visit to the U.S. in the March of 1946, in which he wanted to warn the Americans of the Soviet Russia's oppressive rule of Eastern Europe.
He combined incredible decision-making, very clear decision-making, with amazing rhetorical skills.
For World War I, in 1911, he was the First Lord of the Admiralty. In 1915, he resigned his position in the government and went to France to fight on the front lines until his unit was disbanded in 1916.
Churchill today, our leaders are inspired by him and his persistence. He left a great legacy, and without him, we would not have as much determination as we have today.
Britain was one of the first members of the Allied powers. At first, Churchill was the only person who recognized how much of a threat Hitler would be. It was his warnings that prepared the rest of the Allies to be ready for the war against the Nazis. His first-hand experiences on the battlefield were a great contributor to his ideas as Prime Minister. He was aware of how brutal wars were and wouldn't hesitate to make controversial decisions to win them. On September 2, 1945, Japan formally surrendered to the Allied forces, signaling the end of World War II. Britain was the last nation still fighting against Germany. Without Churchill's hardcore war strategies, they might not have defeated the Nazis. Churchill's ideas were helped to form NATO, which formed all alliances with European and North American countries that could fight together in times of war.
I think Churchill will be a great man down through the ages. And you could not have had a better ally in every sense of the phrase. He gave voice to the common hope of free people. I think he's one of the great men, not just of our time, but of all time.
Not only has Churchill's legacy instated organizations, but it has also affected many people. His determined attitude in the face of dark times is a model of exemplary for many leaders today.